Okay, so a lot of you guys might have seen my last Warhammer review regarding one of the GauntsGhosts novels, His Last Command. However, I want to make this promise. Whenever I do reach that book again, I'm going to delete the old video and do a new one. But first, I wanted to start from scratch, from the beginning of this massive book series. Seriously, GauntsGhosts by itself ranges into like 15 books alone. So, I decided to start with this one by covering the first two, done by Dan Abnett, First and Only and Ghostmaker. And from there, I will start to explain how, after just these first two books, I've actually been eager to read more of the GauntsGhosts, despite the fact that I'm currently on a bit of a Warhammer break as of right now. So, let's get into explaining these two books and go from there. So, to put it simply, First and Only and Ghostmaker works as a very good introductory piece. First and Only gives us more backstory on Gaunt himself, as well as introduces us to the regiment of the 10th First and Only. But it's Ghostmaker that really fleshes out this whole regiment. You get to really know each individual person within this little army. You grow to like them, you grow to understand them, and you grow to see just how they survive throughout the absolute hellscape that is their lives throughout this whole entire series. And honestly, one thing I've noticed just from reading these two, it feels like throughout every single time we are introduced to the problem, it shows the main battle, and then it shows a surprise factor by the end. Which, all in all, if it does keep this formula, at the very least, I hope they at least keep it fresh. Because thus far, with just these two alone, we've seen some very ample surprises that have really kept me on my toes each and every time. But, to put it simply, when I read First and Only, it was kind of dragging at first, but through perseverance, I managed to keep going. And honestly, I am so glad I did. Because while First and Only did pique my interest, Ghostmaker made me a much more hardcore fan of the 10th First and Only as of that point. Because First and Only acts as an introductory piece. We're introduced to them, we learn some of these characters, but then we see how they struggle, because to put it simply, these guys are the last of their home planet. In Ghostmaker, it describes how their home planet was absolutely destroyed by the forces of chaos who managed to sneak up from a retreat during the Sabbath World's crusade. At one point, they would have had 3 total regiments of 10th scouts and soldiers ready to serve the Imperium and aid in the crusade. But, because of the destruction of their homeworld, there is only the first and only regiment of 10th. And as of right now, they are put in a situation where they are now the last survivors of their home planet. And every single time they are put on the front lines, they run the risk of one more of their kind being brought to extinction. And further, we see the 10th pretty much going on to the verge of extinction even further. Honestly though, if I were to pick the best one that really got me hooked, it would be Ghostmaker. Because while First and Only sticks to one major battleground, as well as introduces us to Gaunt himself, whom is a fascinating character considering his rise to become a Colonel Commissar, meaning he is in charge of the 10th First, serving as their essentially both commanding officer as well as kind of their cheerleader, kind of a more more of a morale officer. But in all honesty, he inspires people more with his actions than anything else. But what I did like in First and Only is that we actually get a glimpse of the Men of Iron from the Dark Age of Technology. And we get to see just how dangerous they are and why exactly artificial intelligence itself is forbidden, because they grow to see mankind as inferior. And honestly, just seeing the fact that we have the GauntsGhosts up against a whole entire I want to say army of just killer robots was what really gripped me to the end of First and Only. But Ghostmaker was the big one. Each chapter within Book 2 was essentially from the different perspective on a different planet from one of the soldiers of the Ghost Regiment. For instance, we get introduced to characters like Colin Corbeck, Major Ron. We even see characters like Bryn Milo and Bragg, all of whom are soldiers within the Tanith First, but we grow to understand them and gain more perception into their characters, which really grabbed my attention all the way through, because each planet that they were on, ranging from massive hell-forsaken planets to just frozen waste dealing with orcs, to even just mostly modern-day chaos cultists. But at one point, they actually struggled against a demon. The amount of threats these guys face up, and you wonder to yourself, how the hell do they survive this? And that is what keeps you reading all the way through. But Ghostmaker, the end surprise was the fact that they actually found a small hiding place of the Eldar race. And this one really did well, because at the end of it, it shows how they are all essentially misled, misdirected. And at some point, we actually see the Tanith First essentially reliving the dying days of their home planet. And it actually makes them fight that much harder against the forces of chaos. Hell, even Gaunt himself was essentially accepted as an honorary Tanith in that moment. And the sheer battle frenzy where they are cutting a swath through thousands of troops was inspiring and awe-striking. I am not kidding when I say that these two books sold me, and I am absolutely invigorated to read more. Granted, I will need to find a copy of Necropolis somewhere in order to continue the story with Book 3, as I have seemingly jumped ahead to Book 4. At the very least, just to complete the Founding Trilogy, as it's called within the story. But all in all, these two definitely make for both good military fiction, as well as just good storytelling overall. You really get attached to these characters, and you want them to at least survive in some way. But, to put it simply, despite me gushing about it, let's go ahead and get to the story. Or score. So thus far, with these two alone, I would give a solid 10 out of 10. For both great storytelling, engaging characters, and just all around balls to the walls action that keeps you gripped and wanting more, like a man at an oasis in a desert. Honestly, this is the good type of military fiction that I've been craving for, and I'm honestly excited to read more of the Ghosts to see how they do, because in the end, since I have read Sabbat War, I know that the campaign ends at some point, but I want to see their journey towards that ending. I'm very excited to cover more, and like I've said before, whenever I do reread Last Command, I will delete that old video and essentially make a new one covering that entire story arc. And that is something I definitely look forward to in correcting that mistake. So to all of you who have paid attention and stayed with me to the end of this video, thank you so much again for listening to all my crazy rambles of different books. If you like this video, please feel free to leave a like or a comment down below, and feel free to subscribe to the channel for more. This is Rambling Collector, signing off for now, and I hope that you stay tuned.